The gymnasium smells like sweat, fear, and something else you can't quite name.
73 people.
You've counted them 3 times. Your clipboard shows 73 names, 73 survival rates, 73 potential failures. The fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting everything in sickly white. Outside the reinforced doors, you hear them. The infected. Their moans rise and fall like a sick metronome that never stops. You stand on the bleachers while people look at you.
They're waiting.
A mother holds her daughter's hand so tightly the child's fingers have turned purple. An old man with a compound fracture sits on a bench, his leg wrapped in torn sheets. A teenager grips a piece of rebar like it's the last solid thing in the world. 3 days ago, you were an accountant. You managed spreadsheets and quarterly reports. You went to meetings where people argued about decimal points. That life ended when the city collapsed. Now these people are looking at you because you made one decision correctly. You suggested they move to the high school instead of staying in the downtown shelters.
You were right.
The shelters fell in 48 hours. Infected poured through the ventilation systems. You heard the screams on the radio before the broadcast cut to static. Someone has to make the next decision. A woman in a nurse's uniform raises her hand. "We're running out of water," she says. Her voice is steady, but her eyes are wet. "The containers we have will last maybe 4 days if we ration strictly. There's a water treatment facility 2 miles east. But to get there, we have to cross the open street.
No cover. No walls." You look at your clipboard. 2 miles. Exposed terrain.
You close your eyes and think about the mathematics of death. If you send people, you lose them. If you don't send people, everyone dies slowly of thirst. There's no winning move here. There's only choosing which people don't make it home. You've learned this already. The apocalypse doesn't offer solutions. It offers choices between different types of failure. "We need a reconnaissance team," you hear yourself say.
The words come out steady. 3 people. Fast. Light gear.
We map the route, count the infected positions, find barriers and cover points.
We don't engage. We observe.
We report back. The nurse nods slowly.
A man volunteers. Then 2 others.
You don't know their names yet.
You will.
You'll know all their names. You'll know which ones come back and which ones don't. That's the price of being a strategist. You see everything clearly. You see all the ways it can fail. And you have to decide anyway.
Day 17.
The water team came back with 4 containers and 1 missing person.
Marcus. He was 22.
He had a tattoo on his forearm that said his daughter's name, though his daughter was somewhere in the Midwest and he hadn't seen her in 3 years. The infected caught him on the return route. The other 2 heard the screaming. They kept running. That's what you told them to do.
Don't stop. Don't turn back. Run. And they did.
Now there's a memorial on the gymnasium wall, his photograph pinned next to 5 others who didn't make it. You stand in the makeshift command center, which is really just a small office with a desk, a radio, and maps you've drawn by hand. The old school counselor's office. There are still posters on the wall about college preparation and scholarship opportunities. The irony sits heavy. A man named David enters without knocking. He's been with you since day 5. He's practical. He doesn't waste words. "The East Wing is compromised," he says. "We found 3 infected in the storage room this morning. They came up through a gap in the basement we didn't know about. They're slow right now. Still in the early stage. But they're multiplying." You feel the cold mathematics clicking into place.
73 people.
The East Wing stores 60% of your non-perishable food. If the infected spread, you lose everything. If you seal the East Wing, you lock away the food. You can't access it. 3 options spin through your mind like a calculator running through impossible equations. 1. Send a team in now while they're still slow, eliminate the infected, and risk losing people to a confined space fight. 2. Seal the wing, preserve what you have, accept reduced rations that will stretch your supplies 30 days instead of 60. 3. Evacuate everyone now, abandon the school, try to reach the rumored safe zone 200 miles north. You pull out your hand-drawn map. The safe zone is marked with a red circle, but you only know about it from a single radio broadcast 3 weeks ago. No confirmation since. The route north passes through suburbs you've never mapped, through territories where you don't know infection density. You have 90% chance of losing 30 to 40% of your people on that journey. You have 70% chance of losing key personnel if you fight in the East Wing. You have 60% chance of surviving here on reduced rations if you seal the wing and wait. All the numbers are terrible. All the choices lead somewhere dark.
Seal it, you tell David.
We move everyone to the West Wing.
Double bunking.
We recalculate food distribution. We survive on reduced rations for now. David nods and leaves. You sit alone in the counselor's office and think about Marcus's daughter in the Midwest. You think about whether she knows he's dead. You think about the weight of being the person who tells people which option fails least. The posters on the wall still promise bright futures and successful lives. You cover them with maps so you don't have to see them anymore. Day 32. Something has shifted inside you.
You don't dream anymore.
You sleep in 4-hour segments, and when you close your eyes, you see maps. Infection progression maps.
Supply depletion charts.
Population survival curves. You see the gymnasium from above, like a bird looking down at arranged pieces on a chessboard. Except the pieces are people. Except the game ends with everyone dead. The radio crackles. It's a voice you don't recognize.
New settlement. 15 miles south.
They're asking for contact. They have medical supplies.
They want to trade.
Your hands move across the map before your brain catches up.
15 miles.
The route passes through the industrial district. You've marked it as high infection territory. Your scouts reported seeing clusters of 40+ infected moving together there. One team made it through.
2 didn't.
But this settlement has medical supplies. You have 17 people with untreated infections. The nurse told you 3 days ago that without antibiotics, at least 8 of them will die.
8 people. You know their names.
You know one of them has asthma and wheezes at night. You know another one sings quietly to herself when she thinks nobody is listening.
You call a council meeting. 20 people. Your core decision makers.
You lay out the maps. You show them the risk. You show them the math.
The nurse speaks first.
We need those supplies. People are dying slowly instead of quickly, but they're still dying. An older man disagrees. We don't know if this settlement is real. It could be infected. It could be raiders. We could lose our best scouts for nothing.
Back and forth.
The arguments are reasonable. The fear is reasonable. The hope is reasonable. All of it is reasonable, and none of it changes the fact that people are dying and you have to choose who lives and who doesn't.
You stand up.
Everyone goes quiet. We send a team, you say.
5 people.
Our fastest, strongest scouts.
Full gear.
Radio check-ins every 30 minutes. If we don't hear from them after 4 hours, we pull back.
We don't chase them.
They know the protocol. The nurse reaches across the table and grabs your hand.
Just for a second.
Just a gesture. Just a human contact in a world that's trying to erase humanity. You realize you haven't been touched in 17 days. The sensation is so strange that you almost pull away.
But you don't. Day 51. The team came back. All 5 of them.
They brought antibiotics. They brought bandages. They brought information about 3 other settlements within 50 miles.
They brought hope.
But they also brought news. The settlement to the south is being threatened. A massive herd is moving through the region, possibly 300 infected, maybe more. It's moving north. Toward you. Toward your 73 people in a high school gymnasium with sealed exits and limited supplies. You study the maps. The herd will reach you in 6 days if it maintains current speed.
You have options.
You can evacuate north immediately and join forces with one of the other settlements. You can fortify the school and defend it. You can disperse into smaller groups and scatter across the region, reducing the chance that everyone dies together. Each option has probabilities. Each one has names attached to the failures. You think about Marcus. You think about the people who died taking risks. You think about the people who died playing it safe. You realize there's no actual difference. In the apocalypse, every path ends somewhere dark. But then you notice something on the map. The herd's pattern suggests it's following an old highway corridor. There's a possibility, small, maybe 20%, that it will shift east instead of north. There's a possibility that if you create noise and movement on the west side of town, you might redirect it.
It's insane.
It's dangerous. It's the kind of strategy that gets people killed. But it also might save everyone. It might keep them in their beds. It might give you more time. More time means more options. More options might mean survival. You look at your maps. You've been a strategist for 51 days. You've made decisions that saved people and decisions that killed them. You've learned that the difference between success and failure often comes down to factors you can't control. But you've also learned something else. You've learned that people follow you not because you're always right, but because you think clearly when everything is burning. They trust you to see the entire board, even when the board is made of impossible choices.
You pick up the radio. You call David. You tell him the plan.
You tell him the risks. You tell him to gather the team. Outside, the infected moan in their endless chorus. Inside, people are sleeping. Tomorrow, they'll wake up. They'll look at you. They'll wait for the next decision. And you'll make it. Because that's what strategists do in the apocalypse.
They decide. Again and again they decide.